aire exacto, ¿no? Se pone.
That took a while. All right. Hi, everybody. Stand up, darling. Please. You were sitting all day. Okay, so welcome to our house. You all know us because you got an invite from us. So I'm Dee, and this is my husband, Steve. And thanks to Steve, I have by proxy been passionate about electric vehicles and the uptake thereof since about 2008 with Steve's first conversion. Now, as you can tell by the wonderful turnout we have here today, New Zealand's finally figuring out that this is something we really have to do and take seriously. So we're starting a movement, please feel free to hashtag if you're using social media today, leading the charge. Today's the first event of many events that you'll see us and our many electric vehicle colleagues that are here in the room today talking about and educating New Zealand about the realities of electric vehicle ownership and use. It's coming, and we'd like to speed that process up because we think it's about time it happened. So the next major event is we're going to be going from Cape Reinga to the Bluff with 4 children in the Tesla S. Yeah. Carl will be joining us as well. His Tesla is coming in tomorrow from, it came down from Norway where he was working with Tesla. So I really have to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for joining us today. It means so much, and definitely pay attention to everything that we're talking about today and spread the word and encourage people to ask questions and be sure that you give them accurate answers because this is a technology and a movement that speaks for itself, and it's about time that we took it seriously. So thank you.
Well done.
Awesome. Thanks, Dee. My name is Collart Miles. I'm a facilitator outside of this room, so I'm bringing that as my contribution for this event. So to just help us get a conversation going that folds the whole room in, hopefully. So just on the topic of acknowledgements, I'd just like to acknowledge again Dee and Steve for welcoming us into their household. But I'd also like to acknowledge that there's an awful lot of knowledge and wisdom that's made it into the room today. And that is absolutely each and every one of you. So that's not just around EV tech, it's just about being a citizen, being a human being on this planet. We're all in the same boat. So just sort of acknowledging that, and with the idea that I want that to be brought into the conversation today. So a little bit about how it's going to work today. We are running a fishbowl session. We've done this before at Dee and Steve's place in Matakana for an off-the-grid event, and it worked incredibly well. We gave ourselves an hour, and I think two hours later, was anyone else there? Raise your hands. Yep, so a few people were there. I think about 2 hours later we were still going, and there was an awful lot of spin-out energy out of that, so that what we're about to experience now, I'm hoping, will be as energetic as that. We've made more time allowance this time. If we need it, we'll use it. If not, we can wind it up and start moving on to the next. So my role here is really to create the containers for the conversation to happen, and I'll nudge it along and sort of help guide it along as much as I can, but I really do rely on everybody in the room making a contribution and helping us get the best out of this. So I'm going to give it a loose structure this time. Last time I didn't give it any structure. I just set us off with a few controversial facts or ideas, and then the conversation evolved from there. So this time I'm going to give it a little bit more structure and ask us that we just stop on a couple of themes, which I'll give us in a short while. So has anybody here heard about fishbowl or experienced one before, apart from the off-the-grid? Yep. Anyone else? Yep. Sweet. Okay. So not a hell of a lot of off-the-ground knowledge in the room, which is great. So Fishbowl's really simple. Imagine a panel discussion where you've got a few speakers on a stage with an audience down on one end, and all the wisdom sort of, percolating on stage, and it flows down to this passive audience, all right? It's kind of the opposite of that. What we're going to do is take the panel and fold it in a circle like you see now, and push it to the middle of the audience and wrap the audience around it. Okay? This is why the seating layout is quite important. We've got a circle, we've got a hub right here in the center. Can everyone hear me okay?
No.
No? Oh, is that better?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm not making use of technology as I should. Okay, so we've got the hub in the center, where we are going to get that panel discussion going. And it really just starts with a set of people that you see there. And it's not that important who is actually in the middle, as long as we get the topic off the ground. Now, the rules for Fishbowl are quite simple. We try to constrain the conversation to the middle of the room. So, I know that there's moments where you want to leap in from the outside. Try and find your moment, choose your moment carefully, and make your way down to the center for one simple reason. The conversation in the middle of the room, what we do is we keep one of the chairs empty, and that's a symbolic invitation to anyone in the audience to come down and sit down. So that rule being preserved when somebody takes a seat implies that somebody's got to give their seat up. So whoever's there already, what we tend to see is a really good churn through of audience taking the topic and taking it to where we want it to go. Is that sort of clear to people? Any questions about that? It really is quite simple. Sometimes a little bit difficult to get to hold that when we're a bit passionate about some of the topics. So that's why I thought this time I'd give it a bit of structure, so that you can choose your moment to get to coming down, and you might then be able to make use of the pathways down the side here. For those of you in the back, anyone over here on this side, please feel free to just sort of step forward. I'll be on the lookout for any movement, and I'll hopefully help you sort of get to the seat, and then we'll do the change outs. At the moment, there's not a lot of need for me to be too directed, so I'll sort of trust us for the time being to get the best out of this session. Are there any questions before we move into it? So Dee's got some fact sheets that we can hand out. This will help us sort of get this thing on the go. So the first theme I'd like to put out at the moment is just to give ourselves a little bit of context. So the topic today is electric vehicle technology, how far it's come. We've certainly seen that it's been a hot topic in the media. We've seen that Elon Musk has been driving Tesla, and they've made some massive strides in the last sort of couple of years, but they're not the only ones. They've led the charge, and there's certainly a lot of movement by peers. So the industry is now sensing that it needs to change and very quickly. So the pressure's there, and I guess now's a good time to just turn the lights up and see where it's actually got to. So what I'd like to do is, and I'm very glad Steve's in the centre, I don't know many of the other people in the room, but if we've got any electric vehicle experts or people that have been following this or at the sort of cutting edge, I'd suggest that that's the first topic that we're going to hit as context. It would be great to start to get some insight into how far it's come. B, there are probably some myths and misconceptions around this. New technologies tend to have quite a few myths and misconceptions around it, so we might want to hit some of those and surface some facts that sort of give us a bit more perspective and bring us all up to date. And so before I hand it over to the middle of the room, just a word on wisdom and smartness. What we're trying to do today is activate the wisdom in the room. So there's this old idea of no one of us smarter than all of us. So inviting you to really get into this and let's get this conversation going. Probably makes sense to use the microphone for the people at the back of the room, and it'll act as a good talking stick. So could I pose the question and then get it started? Who can tell us a little bit about, just sort of kind of from I guess a pioneer's perspective, how far EV is, where it is right now as you see it? That might be a little bit surprising to some of those who aren't as familiar with this area as us.
Well, you're talking about context. I'll try and answer that in terms of my context, which is, as a child, I was taken with the idea of electric cars, with this space age fantasy, and that's how we would know that the future had arrived, was when we were all driving electric cars. And so seeing obviously Tesla are the poster child of the EV industry, and when I saw the Roadster being announced back in 2007, and I lusted after it and was in no position to acquire one because they were an American car and only available in left-hand drive, and just couldn't even conceive that they would make it to New Zealand. So I took it upon myself to make one instead, and so I got a car, a little blue Toyota MRS, and I ripped out the petrol engine and I stuck an electric motor in it and a load of lithium batteries, and you know, it went about 110, 120 k's on a charge, and but boy did it go like stink. I mean, it would burn rubber, and that was, I think, what really amazed people. I mean, quite apart from the fact that it worked at all, that it performed better than stock, and I think that's a fact that is maybe lost on people, is that electric motors aren't just as good as internal combustion engines. In a lot of senses, they're better, they're more efficient, they have more torque, they can simplify the drivetrain immensely because you can do away with, you know, crazy gearboxes and double clutches and torque converters and all the associated complexity. And of course, you know, fast forward to 2014, and now I've got 4 electric cars, and I'm running out of PowerPoints. But, you know, so yeah, the industry as a whole has come a long way. There used to be, it was, Tesla were it, really. If you wanted a car that didn't seem to be designed to punish you, and they're still leading the way in terms of battery range and just the amazing features that they build into their cars. Carl here can talk a bit more about what it's like to live in a country where EVs are actually the norm. You want to talk a bit about that?
I can believe this. So as Dee mentioned, I have a Model S. I've owned it for slightly over 1 year now. Purchased it in Norway, which is the leading EV sort of adoption country in the world. They have over 10% of all new car sales now are pure electric vehicles. So that is, like, hit a neat point a couple of years ago. They're sort of creeping up to 1% slowly. About 2 years ago, broke through 1%, and everybody was raving, 1%. And then within 6 months, it was 3%, and the end of last year, broke through 10%. So it's just come along like an e-curve and just taken off, sort of thing. It's just going nuts. They've had a good friend of mine now, I've sort of met through the work I've been doing in the industry, is a lobbyist in Norway. Has been working for 30 years to help Norway get to the stage where they are now. So he's like the father of EVs in Norway. He's helped create all the incentives, basically, sort of convinced the sort of government to change the rules to make taxation on other vehicles fair, to sort of help make EVs more competitive. Then they have, his main motto is polluter pays. So anybody who, huge tax on petrol cars. They cause huge damage in the environment, huge damage in the air quality and health issues in cities. They sort of, main cause for most of the wars around the world, which then costs not only taxpayer dollars but also lives of our citizens and other citizens, not just our own people, but the countries who sort of bomb and destroy as well. So all of this cost then, don't just put the cost onto society in general, make people who contribute to this cost, to purchasing petrol cars and petrol, make them pay for it. So Norway has the most expensive petrol in the world, Norway has the most expensive cars in the world. Right? And this then makes EVs relatively cheap. It's not as relatively cheap, it's like a no-brainer. Anybody who can afford to buy anything basically in Norway, you buy an EV now. There's people who don't buy EVs, the ones who have the tested one, don't realise that they're not just competitive, but that they're better than them that you can get. So that's where we sort of, I've been talking to other people sort of today about sort of how we can help New Zealand get there, and it's like, one of the key words is not calling those benefits incentives, right? They're not incentives, it's just fair taxation. To tax the damage and the pollution and things that are bad for society, and then let the people sort of give them a fair choice there. This sort of makes EVs much more, that's one perspective anyway. Anybody else sort of have any comments or questions about my experience maybe in Norway and sort of things?
I've got a question.
Sure.
Norway's economy, don't they make a lot of money out of oil?
Yeah, but that works in their favour. But if they then sell all of their oil instead of using it themselves, that helps their economy. So although it's not good, it's like crack dealers, they sort of don't deal themselves. They sell it to everybody else, so they're going to make some money and then spend the money buying what you want to buy, but I don't like that side of it either, but that's how it is in a way. But, I mean, ideally every country would sort of put huge taxes on pollution and on cars, vehicles and technologies that use polluting fuels, and bring, crash the oil price. All the polluting oil companies and drillers and tar sands companies would stop wrecking the world. And
So Norway's a really good model to look at. It usually is. I wonder if we could bring the focus back to sort of New Zealand, if that's sort of a model that we can be inspired by. Where are we at in New Zealand, and I guess what are the issues we'd like to highlight? We've got a lot of people in the room. We'd just like to make a request that if you've got something in, come to the front, please, and bring the conversation to the centre. And also just a note about, let's make it a bit more conversational in this group. It feels like it's going to come back to me and then back out, and it's a hub and spoke model. And really what we want is to get this conversation going in a circle right here in the hub. So this gentleman here, you are definitely in the hub. Just so you know.
You've been sitting here. I'm Mark. I've had a leaf in New Zealand now for about 3.5 years. So bringing it back to New Zealand. There are a lot of myths out there about things like range and how much it costs. But just to give you a bit of a New Zealand perspective, I do about 70-80 k's a day. I charge my car at home at night. And who's got a mobile phone here? Anyone got a mobile phone? And when do you charge your phone? At night, yeah.
How long does it take?
When do I charge my car?
How
At
long does it
night.
take to charge your phone?
Okay.
Nobody knows.
So I do about 70 to 80 k's a day, which is about the average, well, it's a little over the average. And it takes me about 3 to 4 hours to charge my car at night. So while I'm asleep, while the electricity network has got downtime, I charge my car, so it's great. So I've got a timer in it, so when I get home, I plug it in at 5 o'clock, 9 o'clock, whenever it is, 3 o'clock, and in the middle of the night it switches on by itself and charges up at a better rate than if you're charging it during the day. Unless of course you've got solar like Steve has here on his roof, you can plug it in any time and you're using the solar. So from a day-to-day basis, we've got 2 cars, one goes a long distance. This Leaf I live in Westmead, and I can drive out to Piha and back on a single charge. So it's great as a city car, but I don't think of a Leaf as a long distance car, whereas the Tesla is certainly a long distance car. So I think someone else, it's time to have a chat. Do you want to have a chat?
Well, I'm Bill Dubay, and this is,
Eva Hakason.
and we happen to be from the United States, unfortunately. Yeah, right. And I'm rather famous, and it's our excuse for celebrities in the TV world, I think, or somehow infamous.
I think we should give them up there.
Oh.
Okay, we cannot assume that everybody here knows who we are, even
No.
if we are the EV world's excuse for celebrities. So it doesn't say very much, unfortunately. Well, I'm Eva, and I have drive and have built the world's fastest electric motorcycle, the Kilojoule. Which looks like this. Big red torpedo. We have quite a few postcards with us. 434 kilometers per hour on batteries. Bill has built, he's not riding because it says professional rider, the Kilocycle, which is the world's quickest electric vehicle, doing 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in less than 1 second. So that's the background for us, and it's just a very, very expensive hobby. So actually, if we hadn't built these vehicles, we could have had at least 2 Tesla Model S. And not the mortgage on the house.
But I've driven an electric vehicle, or owned one, well, since '96. I think I drove one. Here.
I can't hear you if you don't keep it close to your mouth, okay?
So I've driven an electric vehicle since '96, and talk about explaining to people that yes, your car, yeah, it's okay. You don't have to stand in the rain and put electricity in it. You just plug it in your garage when you get home. It spends most of its time being parked, and you just plug it in when it's parked, and then you get in it and drive. It's like a cell phone. You don't charge it when you're talking on it. You just plug it in when you're not using it. And I kind of set the trend in lead acid way back when. And now it's all about the batteries. And we've got good batteries now, and we will probably soon be better batteries. So, here, go ahead and talk. You talk better than I can.
So the reason that we have this very expensive hobby, it's of course it's always fun with racing vehicles, but that's not the main reason. We are really on a mission. We're both a combination of tree huggers and speed junkies. We had the blessing in life to both be engineers, so we can build pretty much anything we want. We work as engineers, build scientific instruments. I am just finishing up my PhD in mechanical engineering. But our mission is to show the world that electric vehicles are not slow and boring. We started this well before Elon Musk was around, and now he has kind of taken over that sexiness work from us, but we still want to show that even if it's not all just sexy, it's also fast. So that's a mission for us, and we are very, very happy to be here. Thank you for inviting us. It's an honor. And yeah, well, I think we're definitely in the same boat, and we just, our little part of this is to show that electrics are not boring and slow.
And there's nothing to prevent, at least the present type of batteries, the new batteries, lithium-ion, any race that is of reasonably short duration, like
10 minutes.
10 minutes or 15 minutes long, anything like, any event, so it's land speed, drag racing, hill climb, any of that sort of event can be won with electric vehicles at the moment.
With current technology.
Current technology, you have the better power to weight ratio than gasoline. And people are amazed at that. And it's like, yeah, it's easy. Just put things together. But it's expensive in parts. But you do get to put things together and build a fast vehicle. And people are amazed. And it's, yeah, anybody can do it. Just got a little bit of knowledge. So and they're simple, by the way. We have a pit crew of 4 people.
And actually, 2 of them, the main job when we're at the Bonneville salt flats, that when we ran for speed records, is to clean off the salt from the vehicle. It sticks like mud and snow everywhere.
So Colt's original question was about the context in New Zealand for electric vehicles, and something that occurred to me while I was just having a snack was that we're not the same as the rest of the world, and we're very much not like America.
No.
Thankfully.
We're quite isolated from the rest of the world, and so that means that the dead dinosaurs that we put in our cars, they come a long way, and we pay for that. So petrol's expensive here, certainly compared to the States, although a lot of that is tax. And so what also means we're subjected to the fickle nature of the international markets. Whatever the price of oil does, and whatever the price of petrol ends up being, that's what we have to pay, and we just end up paying it. Whereas, as far as electricity is concerned, we're right up there. We have so much renewable, 75 to 80% renewable power generation, a lot of hydro, quite a bit of geothermal, a little bit of wind. And so you compare that to what's going on in America, where they really still mostly burn coal and natural gas to generate their power, a little bit of nuclear. It's as a choice for if you're concerned about the environmental impacts of driving your car, then in New Zealand it's a no-brainer, because you're pretty much driving on water if you use an electric car. And if you care about the geopolitical situation and our energy independence, well then it's a no-brainer, because you can unshackle ourselves from the global oil economy and use clean, green, 100% natural New Zealand electricity to drive your car. And again, it's a no-brainer. So in New Zealand they not just make sense, but make more sense than in a lot of other countries. Hi Rob.
Hey, I'm Rob. I'm a petrol head through and through. I love my motorsport, and probably lots of other people here that like V8s and fast cars and turbos and all those kind of things. My biggest thing, I probably didn't know anything about EVs until being exposed to it through Steve and Dee. Obviously, having seen the Tesla and thought, wow, that it's a really good-looking car, and that kind of thing attracts people to something that's shite and grimy and shiny and new and sexy is what the Tesla is. However, one thing, from my point of view, you barely hear about EVs if you're not attached to somebody or sort of have some connection to somebody. And I mean, motorsports is probably, and cars in general, most Kiwi bikes have some interest in them. There's not many people that think of vehicles as just A to B. And I think getting the EV out there, if it's going to be successful in New Zealand, people need to know what the myths are and debunk those myths, because even I probably don't know enough about it to say, yeah, I'd be keen to jump into an EV, because I'd probably be quite sceptical about things that I've heard and things that worry me about how much it would cost me to run one, and if something went wrong, how much it would cost me to fix it, and whether I could afford to do that on my family budget. And the reality is I'd probably go, not quite ready for it yet. Maybe 10 years' time or something like that it might be. But now, I would go, not quite sure. So I think, if EVs are going to be successful in New Zealand, there needs to be more of an uptake, not just from private users, because I mean, most of you EV owners in here are all passionate about it because you like it, right? It's your thing. But I mean, how many corporates are getting on board? How many? Because if it becomes a norm, we all start, business owners start buying EVs for their company vehicles, and that becomes the general transport. I mean, would work in our situation with what we're doing at home. That would probably get other people on board, and I think if you could do that.
Question for you. Do you think that we'll see adoption? Just a quick question. Adoption through mainstream motorsports and Formula One. Do you see that in the near future?
Well, I mean, I follow Formula One, and I know they're talking about the EV or Formula E challenge. I think they've got one already.
Today.
They've got one
Today. Sweet.
But however, it still hasn't sort of captured the imagination, and I suppose it is there, but it hasn't got the same following as traditional motorsports. I know the Nuremberg 24-hour race, some of the top winners and competitors have actually been hybrid vehicles, like Porsche's leading the way with auxiliary electric engines and things like that to actually increase the range, because obviously if you're in an endurance race, if you're stopping for gas every 2 hours, it's going to put you back further than the pack. So, there is possibilities for that, I think, but back to just New Zealand, I think if more people knew about it, more people were exposed to it, and it was probably not trying to encourage the private user so much, and it become normal because you've been exposed to it through work or something like that, then you might get more uptake. I don't know.
Hey, I'm Peter, and I don't have an EV yet. It's on the shopping list. But look around on Trade Me, you can find one for 20 grand, I believe.
Just over 20, yeah.
20, 25, you can already buy Nissan Leafs. There are heaps of them. So I think what he said is, what we need is education, education, and education. People don't know about EVs. Why? Because they don't meet it. Most of the people are followers. So most of the people will not buy something new because they don't know about it.
Fear.
Here.
Fear.
Fear. Okay. Yeah, fear. Fear of the
Unknown.
new things. So the more cars that are going to be available in New Zealand, I just talked to Mark, and he said there are probably 300 electric vehicles in New Zealand right now, and it's slowly increasing, and there is probably going to be a tipping point where more and more people know about it, reach a critical mass, and from that critical mass, if you start seeing your neighbor having an electric car, why is he paying 1/4 of the price for getting somewhere than me?
Why is he getting all the sexy? Why is he getting all the dates with his Tesla?
Is that a form of fear?
Yeah, I believe here today the concentration of electric vehicles is quite high compared to New Zealand. So that's what we need: more and more people to buy electric vehicles. And I mean, 20 grand, it's it's not such a big money for an electric vehicle. In New Zealand, we have to think about how many cars does an average family have. It's still sort of this two-car scenario. You can always have a city car, and you can always have a long range. You can go anywhere where you like a car. And a Nissan Leaf is perfect. I've just driven it, and it's perfect. It can do whatever. It can do whatever you want. 5-seater. You can do everything. Okay.
Hi, I'm Alan. Been driving an EV for 2.5 years now. It's gone rather quickly. 2012 October, I think it was. You know, I just thinking about the motorsport. The guy bought my batteries off. Richard Hadfield has Lightning motorcycles. He won Pikes Peak, and that's not. He wasn't the fastest electric motorcycle. He was the fastest motorcycle. So electric vehicles aren't just a good, clean thing to drive. They're better. They're more fun. You know, they're better cars. And once you drive them, you just think the rest of the world's mad. Especially if you're stuck in a traffic jam and you know you're sitting there using no energy whatsoever, and everybody else is making this stink. That you, especially if you've got the hood down and you're smelling all this bloody petrol. Yeah, it's just crazy. So drive one, buy one, get out, enjoy it. It's going to happen. But that's all I've got to say anyway.
Oh, sorry,
So just before, I think we need a bit of churn in the group, so sorry,
Okay.
I'm going to have to ask you to...
Oh, no.
I'll just give you just context in New Zealand. Here are a couple of figures for us to consider. If 50% of our fleet were electric vehicles, we would save annually $2 billion a year on oil. We'd also save about $290 million a year on poor air qualities, okay? And that's documented in the government's Happings report. And we'd need about $800 million of electricity to power those vehicles. So the net saving annually would be about $1.5 billion a year to this country. And that $2 billion is off our balance of payments. So it's economically, from a macro point of view, it really stacks up. Micro point of view, we've already just heard, you can buy cars now for $25,000. So there you go.
My comment actually follows from that, so you might want to sit down again. So I'm new to electric vehicles, and I guess what's going through my head from one of the first comments is, you know, say we were to have 10% of vehicles in New Zealand be electric vehicles. With the recent experience of the power going out in Auckland, I'm wondering, you know, how the infrastructure is going to keep up. And I understand here that you're charging off solar, but I don't know how much electricity it actually takes to charge a car, but I think of them, especially if you're going fast and they're big, I'm thinking, okay, this is going to be a lot more than my washing machine or fridge. So yeah, just kind of thinking what would the impact be on the power system, and if there was a huge uptake, like how would the system deal with it, and what are the options?
Yeah, I can answer that. So just to give you an idea, if we did have 50% of the fleet as electric vehicles, we would consume about 8% of all electricity in New Zealand to run those vehicles. So it's not much. So, and that 8%, the key to this is ensuring we don't charge at our peak times. And our peak times are between 5 o'clock and 9 o'clock at night when everyone comes home, and some businesses are still running. So if we charge those cars out of hours, then it actually fits very, very well with the electricity network. Now, in answer to your question in regards, you know, if we have a catastrophic event, for instance, and you know what happens to the power. Well, the interesting thing is, how do we pump our gas at our petrol stations?
Yeah.
We use electricity to power the pumps. So you need to power an internal combustion engine, you need both electricity and the fuel. So in Florida, I don't know if you recall, about a year ago, or was it 18 months ago, they had the cyclone go through there, and it showed huge long lines of cars waiting to fuel up for petrol and diesel. And there's a real shortage because they couldn't get the fuel in, the infrastructure was basically broken. But what was quietly happening was all these electric cars were tootling around town, because what in a major event, you know, a major crisis, what normally comes back on first is actually the electricity. So, you know, we've got a good source of electricity from solar, and we've also got the grid to back it up as well. So,
Can I just say something?
Yeah.
You can get an inverter and run your house as well. If your
Yes,
car.
this is what I wanted to say as well. So Nissan is experimenting with car-to-home power solutions. So with car-to-home, you have a 20 kilowatt-hour battery, and with the 20 kilowatt-hour battery, that's probably how much? Probably a day worth of usage, and in normal, if you know that the electricity went out, you will not use it as much. So you have backup power. I lived in Meadowbank, so I was there at the electricity crisis. We didn't have electricity. If I would have a leave parking, I wouldn't have an issue.
so just to answer one other question. One other question you had was, how much power do these cars use? The average house in New Zealand consumes about 7 kilowatt hours of electricity a day. If you drive the average distance on a daily basis around New Zealand, which is about 39 k's a day, you consume about 7 kilowatt hours of electricity. So you consume about a third of what a normal household would consume.
I guess just listening to what you're saying, I'm thinking, okay, well, should this be part of our disaster recovery plan?
Exactly.
Actually, you know, like if you're thinking of what's happened in Christchurch, and I guess for Wellington, they're in a risky position as well. Is there an argument for that?
Think Japan. Think about Japan. Nissan is not experimenting with this out of fun, but because there is actually a use of it. With Japan's all nuclear power stations shut down, there is an even bigger risk of power outages. If you have electric cars everywhere, you have a distributed network. You have a distributed power storage. If you have solar on the top of your house, you again have a distributed power, and it's generated everywhere. There is no major event that actually knocks out the electricity like this. So.
Can I ask a question? How many charging stations do you actually have?
Sorry, the reason why we're keeping it in the centre, another reason is because we've got the camera footage on, and the sound isn't very good when we're outside the circle, so please come on in and join. And then somebody has to give up their seat.
How many charging stations do we actually have in New Zealand? And you said that we have 300 EVs at the moment. How many will we need to get to 10%?
So Steve's got a couple of charging units out in his garage out there, but realistically, you only need a 10 amp socket to charge these cars. We actually supply charging stations into New Zealand, but you can charge them overnight off a 10 amp socket. So specifically answering your question, there's about 120 of those charging units around New Zealand. In Whangarei, they've got the first rapid charger, and this man here is a real advocate for EVs. He needs to have a microphone. So, but it is a good point, is, you know, there's this chicken and egg situation, which should come first, the charging units or the cars? Now, as a user of a vehicle, you'll find that about 95% of your charging is at home. So the charging stations out and about are if you are doing long distances, but you will find that 95% of your charging is actually in a home environment.
Can I ask another question? Because there was this company called Better Place, I think, some time ago, where you swap the batteries. Yeah, I understand that. But in terms of if you do long distance type stuff, and you said with the 70k to PR, it's great. But if you go a little bit further and you get stuck somewhere, then
what do you do?
What do you do? Yeah, I guess the other question was around if we need, what was that, 12% more electricity to charge the demand. What do you think we should be doing?
Well, from a demand point of view, 8%, it's not much to put that into the charging into the grid from an overnight point of view. The challenge we've got within New Zealand, or any country for that matter, is ensuring that 8% does not sit on top of the current peak that sits there. Because if that happens, then you need to build extra lines, extra generation capacity to build for that peak. So the key in this industry is getting that extra 8%, the majority of that, into the off-peak time. So,
Thanks, Mark. My name's Joe. I'm from Whangarei, the EV capital of New Zealand.
yeah,
And
that's
we have the only fast charger in New Zealand. The only one. North Power installed it about in May this year. But I wanted to answer your question because, so North Power, we wanted to answer that exact question. How many cars can be plugged in before it affects the grid? Yeah, so how many cars can be plugged in before it affects the grid? So we took one of our cars, took it to a neighborhood, plugged it in, and monitored that. Turns out you can have 7 out of 10 homes could have an electric vehicle plugged in at 5 o'clock at night during peak, and it's not the voltage, it's not the thermal loss, it's the harmonics. You can filter harmonics. You know, 70%. I'd love to have the problem of 70% penetration. You know, that would be great. So it's not an issue, and yeah, and there's heaps of NAFA geothermal station in Northland. It can double or triple in size. There's just nobody to sell the electricity to. So you know that they're looking for users. Yeah.
So on the point of nowhere to sell electricity to, I was thinking about public transport. Why aren't we doing that? They're doing it in Adelaide with the Tinder bus, and it's using solar array on the roof, and the bus got a range of 250 kilometres, and it lasts 24 hours. So don't we have a real opportunity to actually start creating infrastructure by starting with public? You start educating people, you create charging stations, and you start creating the demand. So I think $20,000 is still quite high for a lot of people. But EVs will come down in price probably in about 2017. That's when we're going to start seeing adoption. I think we have a real opportunity to start creating infrastructure, but we can start with public.
I just for that $20,000, yeah, it is a lot of money. But when you do the numbers, and that's why I bought my car. So if you're going to drive 100,000 Ks in the next 5 or 7 years, you're going to save. So if I drive my Camry 100,000 Ks, I'm going to spend $15,000 to $18,000 on gasoline. If I drive my Leaf 100,000 Ks, I'm going to spend $1,500 or $2,000. So I just paid for the car. So that's why. And I drove from Whangarei, you know, here, charged up in Wellsford on the way down. I'll do the same on the way back. If we had a rapid charger in Wellsford, it would be a 20-minute stop for me.
I think currently New Zealand new car sales is about, what, 30,000 cars per year? Which means that, 100? Okay, it's 100,000 cars per year, and these people, probably at least half of them, bought a car for at least $35,000. A new Leaf now costs $40,000, and you can buy a used one for 20x. So there is still an opportunity here.
So I've driven this Leaf for 3 years, and I've saved $6,000 in petrol alone. The maintenance on these cars.
And the oil changes.
Yeah. The maintenance, in fact, I was showing someone here. I've got a bill on my car for the servicing of it, and it was $114. Now, in my previous cars, they were maybe a little bit more expensive than the Leaf, but I used to, when they were out of service, out of warranty, I used to spend $1,500 to $2,000 on maintenance. The thing is with an electric car is there's so few working parts in them. So you don't, as Steve said before, you don't have a gearbox, it's gone. No problems, you don't have any problems with gearboxes. An electric motor has got so few working parts compared to an internal combustion engine. So there are huge advantages in moving to this technology from a micro cost point of view to consumers.
Hi, I'm Kira. I just relating to your
question and what you were saying, Brent. Does anyone know how much public transport is electric in New Zealand? And of any councils that are using hybrid or hybrid taxis?
Everybody's using hybrid taxis.
So I was going to,
because they're worth it.
I was going to say that in Wellington we have trolley buses, and some of those have batteries, so they don't need to run on the wires. It's quite entertaining to watch the bus cross an intersection, and some guy is standing outside the road. The bus stops, and he hooks it on, and off it goes again. So they're expanding the network. Unfortunately, the Wellington, I don't exactly know who owns the wires, but whoever owns the wires has decided they don't want the wires anymore. And just after the bus company has upgraded the fleet, they're going to shut it all down.
That's crazy.
But that could be retrofitted.
Well, the buses, some of them do have batteries, but exactly how far they go, I mean, they're designed to be charged from the 400 volt quaternary, so maybe they could be converted.
I think what I was trying to say is that we have a real opportunity to create infrastructure, and I'm all for it, and my next car is going to be an electric car, or a car share, or whichever way, but I actually don't want to see many more roads being built, and I don't want to see petrol being burned, so I think there is an opportunity. Car is just something that will be using infrastructure that will drive the adoption of clean technology, and I think EVs will be the deal breaker when we're going to start seeing solar adoption and wind adoption, because the technologies will converge. And the reason why I bring up public transport is I think that could be an opportunity to start infrastructure rather than appealing to the petrol heads, the electric heads, you start looking at the wider audience.
Is there anyone here from the local government or central government?
Wellington. That's like follow, right?
So the
We drive 2 electric vehicles.
The Auckland electric trains are a good sort of lesson in electric vehicles to the general public. I mean, I've stood facing away from the track in Newmarket Station, which is the station sort of almost inside a building, and not realised the train has just pulled in. They're almost completely silent, and it's a bit disappointing they're not faster, but maybe they'll turn that up once they're more confident.
I'm just too scared.
I've heard that, yes. So when you compare like the diesel train going past with the electric train that follows it, it's like night and day.
An interesting story following on from that. We talk a little bit about pollution and the air quality and other sort of issues with conventional sort of vehicles versus electric. The one thing we don't so often think about maybe is the noise pollution from conventional vehicles versus electric, especially in cities. A lot of people live next to motorways or close to the busy roads, and that can be annoying then having these busy roads often. I had an interesting experience in my Model S driving in Denmark 6 months ago. I just arrived with my family. We were driving down to visit my parents in South Denmark, and took a night ferry, arrived early in the morning, so everybody else was still sleeping. And I was driving on the motorway 110 kilometres an hour. You could hear a bit of road from the tyres and the wind on the roof. I could hear this funny click, click, click sound that I hadn't heard before. I've been driving the car for 6 months, and I was starting to think, what's this strange sound I haven't heard? And I started looking around, and I could see my father-in-law's hand on the armrest next to me, and I could see his watch, wristwatch, and I could see the second hand on his wristwatch moving around, click, click, click. I was driving 110 on the motorway, and I could clearly hear his second hand on his watch tick. And that's the difference between electric versus anyway, it's a short story.
Does that difference persist outside the car? I mean, I live on a street that's a bit of a hill, and you can't really hear the engines except on the light trucks and the buses, but you can definitely hear the tyres. It seems like over a fairly low speed, it's the tyre noise that dominates, but I haven't heard in Model S going at speed.
Well, I'm happy to come and do a test run, I guess.
Hi, my name's Jason. Like yourself, I'm a petrol head and also a mechanic. One of the things I'd like to ask is, okay, so we've talked about the definite benefits of EV. One of the other benefits I can see is you pay less tax when you've got an EV. because you don't buy petrol's tax. So that's another benefit. Secondly, so we talked about education. So how do we educate people? And thirdly, how do we get more options in regards to what we buy in EV? Because I don't see much options around in regards to the type of vehicles and the information we can actually have for the general populace to make a buying decision.
I can just relate to my experience in Norway. In Norway there's a website set up which basically gives you a list of, there's 20 odd pure electric cars you can buy. It lists all the cars, the differences, you can compare them very easily, you can see what ranges they have. So you can compare all the different features of each type of car. It makes it very easy for people to then decide. Part of the reason why the other car companies haven't come to New Zealand is the lack of demand. It's like right-hand drive for a start, most of them are left-hand drive, other sort of left-hand drive markets. And to be able to come here, they have to have a minimum number of, minimum amount of demand before they're going to make that investment, because it's going to be difficult for them. So we need to create the demand before, it's like catch-22 in a way, I guess. Until we can sort of show them that there's going to be enough demand, they're not going to make the investment. It's easy for Nissan because they build right-hand drive cars, so that's probably a Nissan here, nothing else except for the
I think it's not exactly catch-22 because you've kind of described exactly what we need to do.
Yeah.
Which in Norway, it's law. We have pretty much one major party in this country, or if not only one political party in this country, that would ever say polluter pays. We just saw how they did in the election, and that's not very hopeful. I'd even be curious to see what the spread would be in votes in this room for what kind of political parties. But I think it's very key that we need laws coming in and taxes to incentivize the cars to get that kind of 10%. I think we're at what, 1/10 of 1/millionth of a percent right now in New Zealand as far as drivers. Should this become not just an enthusiast movement but a political movement as well? That's huge.
Just sort of relating to that, I always keep saying $20,000 isn't much and you'll save so much money. And I imagine in this group of people, and there's a lot of people who buy new cars and they totally should be buying an EV, but this, people who $2,000 is a big expense to buy a car. I think there just needs to be some acknowledgement of those people as well. And they're already, they lose their job if they don't have a car, and they're paying all the extra petrol tax, which is a greater percent of their income kind of thing. Yeah, I just wanted there to be some acknowledgement that there is still a way to go before it becomes affordable for a large group of people.
It's sort of a side story. It goes back to political parties, and I think one thing in New Zealand is there is a lack of consciousness around air pollution. You buy a car, there is now what, Euro 4 as the minimum import standard, so you cannot import anything basically before 2004. But still, even if you buy a new car, 10 years later, all of the emission controls on that car is broken down. Is anyone asking you to fix it? No. And there is no such thing. Coming from Europe, everything is compulsory every year for newer cars, every 2 years, for older cars every single year, maybe at the end, every half a year, you have to undergo emission test, carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, and all of these measurements, and if you don't pass the test, you failed. No license plate, and Kiwis are not accustomed to this. So a VOF is a $30, $50 simple check on the car. Emissions are not concerned on that. And why would you replace the emission controls on your car for $2,000 if you are not required to? And in the end result is that you go behind the car and you know that the catalytic converter on that car is broken down. You can smell it. And you see diesels emitting black smoke, and you go behind them, and even the newer ones, you smell the sulfur, it's the acidic smell coming out from the diesels. And it seems it's all fine for people, and political parties are trying to be, well, the leading political parties are trying to be open. Oh, the open market will decide.
Which we know
Which
In New Zealand, it can't.
Which we know that if people are always going towards the less hassle, so less money I have to pay. This is going to back to society issues. It's like you vote for somebody who says that you will have to pay less tax. Is that right? Yeah, of course. For the immediate benefit, it's right, but in the longer term, it might not be right. The question is, if some people said we would need to incentivize EVs, who is in this room ready to pay more in taxes to do that? Raise your hands, please.
Sorry, what's the question?
So the question is, would you be happy to pay more taxes in order to incentivize electric vehicles in New Zealand?
No.
I didn't say I'd be happy.
No.
I
already pay a lot of taxes.
Obviously nobody...
I pay a lot of taxes. I think we need a policy change, not more taxes.
Redirect existing taxes.
Yeah, I think
that's...
we can do better than
Tax what
that.
you don't want and
Yeah,
subsidise what you do.
we're still subsidising stuff we shouldn't be subsidising.
I think that any political party that proposed that kind of situation would probably lose the following election.
Yeah, that's a problem. I think let's just leave the political ground here because that always leads too far.
I've got an answer to that. So there's a real simple answer there. A country needs money to run the country. That's all it is.
Yep.
There's a budget. And where you get that money from is another question. So that's what he's talking about is changing the tax structure. You reduce income tax and move the tax to something that you don't want. So double petrol tax and hard rental tax, whatever works.
Yep.
Done.
I think I was trying to think of what would be the right tax structure for cars. So because what I see now is that cars are not taxed at the for the right reason. For example, you have the petrol tax. What is the petrol tax? Where does it go? It goes into roads. So, or roads or somewhere else. So in petrol tax, what you should pay for is the air pollution, and you have road user charges to pay for the car that is actually running. And why is a small car paying the same amount of road user charge as a big car? And there are a lot of questions here.
No, they're not. It's based on weight.
Is it?
Yes, it's based on weight. And I'd like to know if the electric vehicles are paying road user charges. Well, they should be, because they're using the roads. They're damaging the roads.
They're exempt till 2020, and then the road user
Yeah, so the gist of it is, when you dig down, there's so many little, this is what you were saying before, you don't want to get into that argument, there's so many nooks and crannies in terms of what you should tax, what you shouldn't. But at a very high level, it's pretty simple. You should tax the stuff you don't want in society, and obviously over time, because that thing you're taxing will start to reduce, so you have to continually adjust the tax structures, but governments do that anyway. Let's start at the very high level and say let's have a plan. Where do we want to be in 10 years' time? Where do we want to be in 30 years' time? Let's go there and let's put the tax structures in place that gets us there. And that also addresses, if you've only got a $2,000 budget to buy your car, and petrol's doubled in price, you still might choose to buy the $2,000 car, just you're going to be a lot more careful about when you use it. So it doesn't stuff that up, but it also encourages more people to uptake EVs, and there's going to be more in the second-hand market, so everything gets better. It doesn't happen tomorrow, but in 10 years' time it'll make a big difference.
Hi, I'm Steve. I just want to make a comment on this affordability. So, look, in terms of the numbers, 300 out of however many vehicles on the road, we're not even out of the innovator stage. So, adoption of new technology is very well studied. You start off very shallow on a curve with the innovators, and then you go into early adopters, then mass adoption, and that's when it will become more affordable. So, the fact that Steve and Dee have chosen to actually not just buy their car and enjoy it, but create this movement and to promote the adoption of the vehicles is fantastic, because they're in that innovator stage and they're helping to push towards the early adoption and then the mass adoption. So that's what will make it more affordable for those people. So we shouldn't actually, definitely shouldn't feel guilty about the fact that people can afford to buy electric vehicles, and if people have different earning capabilities. So, you know, how are they going to use that? You know, we're all on this planet, we're all part of the game, so it's just a choice about, you know, what we do with that money. And, you know, if you can use that money to drive the adoption and make it more affordable for the, you know, for that middle of the curve, then, you know, I guess I see that as a really good thing. So we shouldn't, I guess, you know, yes, acknowledge that people may not be able to afford 20,000